we are all, like I said, we're all just broken people just trying to help. We're no better than these kids that are coming in the home. We just open our hearts and our home to them, and we are literally all growing together. We are all trying to figure this out together.
Welcome to Intrinsically Motivated, where we have conversations with experts in the field of addiction, recovery, and those personally affected by it, as we seek to mobilize the church to replace addiction and mental health challenges with flourishing. On today's episode, we'll be talking with Aisha Ward, head of the Northeast Tennessee region for Kids Belong. We'll be talking about her work and experience in foster care. I'm Tucker Clements, audio engineer and editor for Uplift Appalachia, and this is Intrinsically Motivated.
So you work with Tennessee Kids Belong, yes?
Right.
So tell me a little about Tennessee Kids Belong, what that is, because that's how I got to first meet you, was through Tennessee Kids Belong. So tell me a little bit about what Tennessee Kids Belong is.
Yeah, Tennessee Kids Belong, we're a nonprofit that supports the foster care system. And so our main thing is that everyone cannot foster, but everyone can do something. And so we try to find those spaces in the community where people can do something. So when we're working with businesses, to wrap around foster families by offering a discount. We're working with the faith community to wrap around foster and adoptive families through RAT ministry. And all of those things that we're doing, it ends up changing the experience and the outcome of the children in care. One of the biggest things that we do is video shoot days for kids that don't get as much attention. So the teenagers and sibling groups, and we have days for them to just have fun, but it's really an opportunity for them to have a voice, and the videos help them get adopted, just have more presence, and so people could see their personality shine.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And so,
and so much what you're talking about, like just supporting the family. It's more than just matching families that are already interested with a kid, but also making sure that they're supported in all the things they need, which I think
we could recruit families all day, but if we don't simultaneously recruit communities to support those families.
Right. Well, because if you're trying to recruit people and they're like, I don't think I'm going to be able to do that, but they also know at the same time you're recruiting their support system as well.
Right.
That's going to help people feel more comfortable, I feel like,
exactly.
kind of getting involved. And the reason that I think we originally got connected, because we were starting as Uplift to kind of go down that path of foster care ministry, like you were talking about, wrapping around families and that sort of thing, is so in line with what our mission is and the way that we're trying to also motivate and equip the church, especially when you think about how, I guess, closely aligned, intertwined the ideas of addiction and foster care are really, like, they don't, there's not a lot of separation there.
Exactly.
Right. And so I know when I first met you, I'd been told, you need to meet Aisha. You need to meet Aisha. And there was an event that was actually being held at my church where they were welcoming in, I just forgot
Bishop Martin.
They were welcoming Bishop Martin. If you saw the movie about his church in Possum Trot, Sound of Hope, their whole church got involved in foster care and adoption and this sort of thing. And our church was hosting an event that an organization was bringing him in to speak, and we finally got to meet there. Yeah. And so, and I could tell right away that our mission is Uplift, your mission at Tennessee Kids Belong. All these were really working kind of hand in hand. We're focusing on the same sorts of things. But even the fact that event was happening kind of speaks to the fact there is kind of a hunger and a newfound, I guess, energy around foster care and adoption in our area here in the Tri-Cities. Have you noticed that, or can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think there is, and especially in the faith community, I think that one of the things that I liked about that event is that, and even at Tennessee Kids Belong, we're trying to do, and I know you guys are doing too, is just trying to put more like positive accountability in the faith community to just be good stewards of his people and within the church and in the surrounding community, and just what does that look like, having the right tools and just we can see all the agencies and all the people, the professionals, and just think like they'll do it. But, events like that, I think it kind of forces people to just rise up and say like, you know what? I can see my neighbor. I can see my child's school mates, and let's see them and see what they need,
Yeah, and I think so much of what we're trying to do a lot of times is just open people's eyes to see, the people that need the church are people, and they're not just a number. They're not just a statistic. They're not just, there's actually humanity in there. Mm-hmm. And then your heart kind of breaks for people that are in different situations, that sort of thing. But also just to see that it is part of something we ought to be naturally motivated to do, just because it's so part of who we're called to be, even to begin with. So I'm just curious. So you said you do a lot of partnering with, other organizations. You are pretty well connected with different organizations and I guess other businesses and that sort of thing. What does your kind of web of connectivity look like through the Tri-Cities?
Yeah, we're partnering with the churches and businesses that want to be foster friendly, so like Wallabies and stuff like that, people that just want to support the families. And then we work alongside the Department of Children's Services and any private provider like Youth Villages, Omni, and all of them.
Right, yeah.
And so our partnership with them, we do help recruit, but we're not a child placement agency. And so when we're coming in, it's like this middleman. We're helping to share the stories of the foster families, and if people come to us, we're just like, all right, here are the resources in the community, but if you can't foster right now, here are some other things that you could do.
Right. So you really are kind of that translation between the placement agencies and the people that are looking for ways to get involved, and here's how you can do it. So I know one of the things that we've talked about as our organization with what you're doing is kind of how can we get the things that you're training people on and you're teaching them married with the language that we're using and some of our trauma-informed care training and these sorts of things too. And I think it's going to be really key because, again, it's that seeing people where they are and understanding, kind of why they're sometimes in the situation they're in and being able to respond well to that. And I'm really excited about
That's why I love the trauma training that you guys do, because I think that a lot of people have the heart to want to support, but the trainings that you guys provide are so vital to educate these people to serve well.
Yeah, and we're just going to clip that out. We're going to turn that into an advertisement. So I'm just kidding. But I really think what you're trying to do is just another direct application of so much of what we're trying to do, which really is that kind of motivating and equipping the church. How did you find yourself working in this area? What kind of drew you to this?
I lived in Knoxville once I graduated from UT, and I was working at Chick-fil-A there in the mall, and this girl would come up to the register. She would come in with another lady, and then this guy would come, and some kids would come. I never knew what was going on. And by the time she made it to the register, she was always crying, just in full tears. And so eventually I was like, hey, can I give you a hug? And I gave her a hug. Then eventually I found out she was having visitation with her kids. So it was a caseworker, the child's father, and they were having visitation there. And so over time, after talking to her, one of the things she said was that the DCS was saying that she needed to not live in the same home as the dad as a chance to get her kids back. And I had a 2-bedroom apartment, and I was like, maybe you should move in with me. Complete stranger.
Just right out there.
Yeah,
it was
so crazy. And so she moved in. I didn't give her a key or anything, but she moved in, and I'm like, it was a situation. But like, that was my first encounter with a biological family, and I really didn't know anything about foster care. And then not too long after that, I was approached to work at a private provider to move to Johnson City, and I had been in Knoxville for so long, I didn't even realize Tennessee went past. I had never been past Knoxville.
Don't worry, Nashville thinks Tennessee stops in Knoxville too.
So I was like, Johnson City, where's Johnson City? And so so I've been in the area for about 13 years now, and I moved up here to work in foster care. But I always tell that first story because that kind of set the stage for my passion. Like, I still have a passion for biological families and seeing them. She went through a lot while she was living with me, and she ended up losing all her rights to her kids. Her kids got adopted. It was the best situation, but seeing everything she went through, like, she never healed from her childhood trauma. And once she became a parent, it's like nobody saw that anymore. Nobody saw her trauma, just everything she was doing wrong, you know?
Right.
And it just really impacted her so heavy. Like, one day she came back and all her hair was chopped off. She cut her hair, and I was like, oh my gosh, what happened? And she said she went to court, and the foster family, they never even acknowledged that she was there. Like, they wouldn't even look at her. Later on, she found out that the family, they could not have biological kids, and they were just, you know, a little nervous about her getting her kids back because they had fallen in love with the kids. And so, like, they were both walking into that situation with biases about each other and fears, too.
Right.
They just didn't know how to, you know, see one another.
How to make that work.
Yeah, how to make it work. And so, probably carrying their own traumas. And so,
absolutely. I mean, absolutely. That makes perfect sense that somebody would, I mean, you haven't been able to have kids. Now you have these kids that you've been caring for. It's not surprising. I don't think you would encourage foster families not to love the kids that are in their house. That sort of, like, you're expecting, I mean, especially if you're coming from somebody within the church, like, it makes sense that you're going to love these kids that have found themselves in this kind of horrible situation. It's just a tough kind of path to end up walking and to know how to kind of respond to that. Is she still in your life? Did she stay in your life after that situation?
She did, because I felt really, I didn't know a lot about foster care, but I felt a lot for her, because I didn't have kids myself, but I couldn't imagine the pain that she was going through.
Right, yeah.
And we stayed connected for several years after that. The family, after they adopted, they ended up staying in connection with, like, they would send cards and stuff like that. And so she never got the help she needed, though. And so that was the sad part, that, like, she never was seen. And
I think that's the hard part about the kind of ministry that we're often trying to call the church into is sometimes you're going to have wonderful outcomes, and sometimes you're not going to have wonderful outcomes. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't still, you know, get involved and try to do everything that we can and be as obedient as we can in those moments, because you don't know which outcome. And like you said, for the kids, that might have been the best possible situation. You hate that she never got to the help that she needed, but it was there. I don't know there would have ever been even an attempt to help her find that if she hadn't had that opportunity. So was your degree in social work or something like that?
Business administration.
Just business,
Yep.
Business administration, you just found out that you really loved people and you wanted to help people this way.
Yeah, once I started working at the agency, like, I just realized, like, that's what I loved, and I think I will be doing something in foster care for as long as I can. We're currently foster parents now, and so.
So did your work in foster care lead you to want to become a foster parent, or had that been in the back of your mind at some point ever?
The work in foster care led me to want to be a foster parent.
So what was it about? Because again, now you're going to see the positive side and the negative. You're going to see the good and the bad.
Yeah.
How did that still kind of push you, motivate you to feel like you should get involved?
Yeah, I mean, some days you're like, because you see the bad and you're like, oh, I could never do this. But you just, to see those kids come in that office, and there was one time this girl came in the office and she didn't know I worked there, and she just looked at me and she was like, are you my new mom? And I was like, oh my gosh. And it just kind of broke my heart, because she was just so used to just having different mother figures, and she just thought that I was the next one. Is this
the next one? Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's hard to be exposed to, no matter how hard the heart is, but to be exposed to something like that for so long and not feel like I could do something, like I could help a few kids. And so.
How long have you been fostering?
Well, I've been fostering for, I think we're on year 2.
Year 2?
Yep.
How many kids have you had in
We've
your house?
only had, including the kids that are in our home now, 5.
And don't say only. That's 5 more than most people will have.
Yeah.
What have you learned from those last 2 years?
So the movie Possum Trot actually helped a lot, because when it came out, we went to the movie theater. I was really struggling because after you work in it for so long, you think, I know everything. And then you get on the other side and you're like, man, there's a lot that I don't know about this side of foster care. Like, I was on a professional side. And so we just kept feeling like we were failing the kids. And when I went to watch the movie, I'm just like, oh my gosh, we're just all broken people just trying to do our best. And so, like, I have to set realistic expectations for myself and just be as transparent as possible with the kids in our home. And just, and so, like, after that point, we have to have more grace for ourselves, because at one point my husband was like, I feel like we need to go to the altar and repent, because he was that's
a great place to be, though, just always repenting.
Yes, because he was like, man, I just some days we would not have enough patience at all, like, and then we would feel bad because we're like, we need to be more patient. But after we watched that movie, we're like, we're human. We are all, like I said, we're all just broken people just trying to help. We're no better than these kids that are coming in the home. We just open our hearts and our home to them, and we are literally all growing together. We are all trying to figure this out together, and so it's okay. It's okay.
And that all together part is why it's so important to have kind of a deep bench sitting behind you too, of a community wrapped around you that are supporting you along the way, having organizations that are there to kind of help, bridge that gap between you and the placement agencies, and all of this sort of thing is so important.
Exactly.
You have biological children too, though, right?
Yep, we have. Yep.
So what has that relationship been like, fostering with your kid, your biological kids?
Our first round, it was fine while they were there, and then when they left, I didn't realize how attached my kids had got to them. We only had them for like 3 or 4 months, and so I didn't think nothing of it,
Right.
And we knew from the moment that they got in the home that they were going to be going to extended family. Had a great relationship with the extended family, and I just assumed that everybody would be okay. And my bio kids, man, they were heartbroken when they left. And I was like, it just kind of made me take a step back, and I was like, okay. But it was fine. Like we worked through it, kind of like you would if you're grieving somebody,
right,
just working and like celebrate the stuff we could celebrate. And then,
but that's awesome that they care. How old do you care if I ask? How old are your kids?
My son is 7, and then my daughter is 11.
Okay.
Yep. And so yeah, it was kind of sweet, because I didn't even realize, in the chaos of like trying to blend the kids,
right,
sometimes I didn't see how close they were getting.
You're fostering kids, but they're kind of fostering siblings at the same time. There's still kind of that same, and the fact that they got attached at the same time can be an encouragement. I mean, it makes it sad if they move, but especially if like it's families being reunited, that's a positive thing. But it's hard to, and I can see why that'd be hard to understand sometimes if you are a child trying to work through all the different, like, how am I supposed to react to this and that sort of thing.
But we've been able to, we kept a good relationship with the extended family. They sent us a Christmas card. We sent them a Christmas card. We send videos of the kids back and forth. And so
it's a great way to just build new friendships and all these new relationships, that sort of thing. Yeah. So do you all feel like you have a great support system in your life to kind of keep doing that work?
Yeah, we're building it. When we got our first kids, we had several people send meals in the first couple of weeks. And there was one day everybody was dysregulated. And I looked at the clock and I was like, oh my gosh, dinner. I cannot cook dinner. And then here comes pizza coming up the driveway because I forgot one of my friends was ordering pizza for us. And I got so emotional because I was like, oh my gosh, never got so emotional over pizza. And so I messaged her and I was like, thank you so much for ordering this pizza. Like, it was the perfect time because she didn't tell me what day she was ordering it. She just was going to order it. Yeah.
Pizza showed up.
Yes. And so,
I mean, I don't blame you. I get emotional about pizza too whenever I see it coming. No, but I think it's those little, like, again, not everybody's necessarily called to have kids in their house. Not using that as an excuse to say that that's not necessarily you. If you're listening and saying, "Oh, well, then I don't have to," because other people, no, it might still be you, and that's okay. But just every little bit of support that somebody can have is so important. Which is why, from our perspective at Uplift, we're so invested in trying to get whole churches motivated and equipped. Even if they're not all doing addiction ministry or foster care ministry individually, the whole church is welcoming new people into the body. Hopefully, the whole church is also supporting the people, and that's going to take every single one of us because we can't all order pizza every day for everybody else in the church. But if you've got a small group of, 7, 8 families, you can really take care of one another for an extended period of time in a really meaningful way that may make all the difference for somebody who's adjusting to different new challenges and things in life. So, so I know you talked a lot about obviously the business side, but also recruiting support and helping kind of train churches and get them ready to get involved in foster care ministry, that sort of thing as well. What sorts of work do you do with the church? What does that relationship look like? And
when we're working with churches, we're presenting them with a layout to basically create a foster care ministry. Utilizing whatever resources they already have, but there's some areas that we're really hoping that they kind of hone in on. So just recruitment, retention, teaching and committing to using the pulpit to teaching about foster care, and maybe one sermon a year. But that's something just to encourage the congregation to support these children in care. And so it could look like churches hosting a parent night out or a support group. Of course, we want the trauma training, and in my area, I kind of been pulling Uplift for that. When churches do, we encourage every church to be trauma trained. And so we try to use the resources here for that. But any type of way for them to wrap around foster families, that's what we're working with them to do. Identify those families, identify what the need is, and then equip a few people in the church, or as many people as they want, to have that solid foundation to support those families.
So what has been successful for you, or what kind of success have you had in kind of getting partnerships with some of the churches in the area, that sort of thing?
It's slower in my area. I have colleagues all across Tennessee, and I cover all of Northeast Tennessee. But
that whole part of Tennessee that you didn't know existed, right?
Yeah, the whole part of Tennessee I didn't know. Yes. And so we have had events. We've had panels at churches and things like that, and parent night out, and we've had churches celebrate foster families, like during May for Foster Care Awareness Month and stuff like that. We have had a few churches that have created those rap ministries within their church, but we could use more of those. But yeah, so we have had some wins over the years, but I do believe that there are more opportunities in our area for the faith community to just kind of just commit long term to advocating. There's a lot of ministries in these churches that overlap with what both of us are doing.
Exactly.
So
I hear a lot of what you're saying, and you're saying all that very nicely, because the way that I sometimes say it, and maybe not necessarily on the podcast, or maybe not necessarily if I'm sitting in somebody's church or something like that, but it's really hard to get the church motivated. Mm-hmm. It really is. And sometimes for great reasons, because you've got churches that are really active, doing lots of things. And for those churches, it is that exactly what you were just saying. It's that helping them realize just how much overlap there is in recovery ministry or foster ministry, with probably 75% of what they're hoping to do as a church already. And sometimes it's helping connect those dots. But sometimes churches are so kind of hyper-focused on the things that they're working on. And this has just been my experience as we've been working with churches.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that you've had some experiences. It's hard to kind of broaden the scope of what they're looking at, or just kind of open their eyes to see just how good an opportunity that could be for churches. And again, we're not the church, so I'm not wanting to come in and say, here's how you should be doing ministry. We, like you said, it'd be great if it's coming from the pulpit. We want it to come. We want anything that we're doing in churches to come from leadership in the church, top down, because we think that's the way that God intentionally structured the whole church, and that we think it is going to be more lasting and effective that way. But it can be challenging because you have big churches that it takes a long time to steer a big ship, and you've got small churches that just don't necessarily have the resources or the people available that would be really willing, but they're like, I just don't know how we're gonna work this in. And sometimes that's just, well, how can we help just get you equipped to support somebody else who's doing this? And it really is. It is a big challenge.
The problem with foster care and with presenting it to churches, sometimes I think it looks too big of a task, and we're looking at it from there are over 8,000 children in care across Tennessee, and we don't have enough foster parents. And so sometimes when we're looking at what the issue is, we're looking for like this instant gratification that's just not, it's just not there. That's not what you're going to experience in foster care ministry.
And the instant gratification of, as soon as I welcome this child into my house, everything's going to be fixed.
Exactly.
And it's going to be perfect. And then the parents are going to get everything together. They're going to be either reunited, or we're going to immediately have closure, and I'll adopt this child, and it'll be, and it's never that. It's never that. And again, but I love that you were saying earlier, you're trying to give positive language to some of that too. Cause I think that's so important, because sometimes we just, I've heard it in several churches when you talk about addiction ministry or foster care ministry. A lot of times the language is, now look, I know you're thinking this is going to be so hard, and we do some of that. We have a whole training called "It's Hard, but It's Worth It" when we do that, like, because we don't want to shy away from the fact that there are challenges in this sort of thing. But especially if you're talking, and there are, foster children sitting in there listening to that can be a hard thing to hear. Oh, so you're admitting that I'm a burden? No, that's not what we should not be always focusing on the negative. We're like, look at how amazing this opportunity is to have even a short-term impact in a family's life or in a child's life. Even if it's only for a few days, if you're doing respite care for a weekend, or for a few weeks, if it's a short-term placement, or even if it ends up being, 2-3 years, or for the rest of their life. It's like we worry too much sometimes about some of those negative things, which is why we like to admit, yes, there are going to be some challenges. There can be those things, but it's finding the value in working through those challenges sometimes that we don't get to that part of the conversation too quickly, because it's so easy to worry about, what are the possible negative outcomes that we could have from getting involved.
Most definitely. Yes. There's so many things that I hear that is kind of in that worry boat. Like, well,
right. I love that worry boat.
It's just like, but wait, like, when you think about discipleship and ministry, it's a domino effect. And so just focus on the people that are literally in your church first, and then go from there. And so if we could just narrow the scope of foster care and addiction in the faith community, I think that the way we saw churches rise up so quickly for the flood relief and stuff like that, I think that showed the Tri-Cities area that showed me, people like me and you, that we have the resources. Like, we could do it if we just...
You're speaking my language now. Because that was, it's like, it's so encouraging to see what the church can do.
Yeah.
And now I think we're both kind of in the same, let's take that same energy and just keep channeling it.
Doing it.
Not saying there's not still disaster relief things that need to happen because of the hurricane, but it's like some of the biggest emergencies are kind of, and instead of just kind of sinking back in and waiting for the next hurricane, which, let's be honest, might be a minute. That was once a 1 in 1,000 year flood kind of thing.
Right.
Like, let's just keep that energy and let's channel it into some of these other areas where we'd have just as big an emergency. I think how many children did you say were in foster care in Tennessee as an estimate? Around 8,000 or so?
Over, yeah.
So I often, when I'm talking about the addiction crisis, I'm talking, when we're talking addiction, we can't just track people that are struggling with addiction, right? Mm-hmm. You can't just track that. So the best way to kind of track numbers, unfortunately, is tracking overdoses and reported overdose deaths. And I think in our area, and when I say our area, I kind of think there's 21 counties in Northeast Tennessee, Southwest Virginia that our healthcare system exists in.
Yeah.
There are 21 counties there. And in that area, there were somewhere around 2,000, 2,500 overdoses in a year.
Yeesh.
Right. In those 21 counties, there are 2,300 churches. And I would imagine if we're going 8,000 people, 8,000 children in foster care in the across the Tennessee, you're probably somewhere around that same 2,000, 2,300 number in the Northeast Tennessee, Southwest, like that. Right. This area that Uplift and your region for Tennessee Kids Belong are all kind of working in. There are that many churches, which really doesn't mean that we're even saying every church has to take in as many kids as Bishop Martin's church in Possum Trot did, where their whole church took all of the children, right? We're not even necessarily, it'd be awesome if churches found themselves willing to do that sort of thing, or to get so involved in addiction ministry that, every single person who's struggling with substance use is ending up in there. But I love using that number because there's that many of us.
Yeah.
And I don't think even the smallest of our churches, there was a church that my mom, who's our president, was visiting with, and she looked at their attendance board for the week before, and I think their attendance was like 11 or 12 people. They're a small little church. When we had a church plant in downtown Johnson City, our largest weeks were like 35 people. Like there are a lot of churches that are not big, but 35 people could really make a big impact in one child's life, or in one person who's struggling with addiction's life. And those two people might be connected because, like we said, foster care and addiction have a lot of areas where they tend to overlap, because where there are struggles with keeping families together, there's often addiction connected in some way. And so it's like, if we can get 2,300 churches excited about what we're doing, it's like we could really... We could have that same kind of impact they were talking about in Texas. We could do the same thing in Tennessee. There's no reason that our church can't rise up. And we have churches that are starting to. Like you said, you've got some churches that have started doing some of your things. We have churches that we're having more and more conversations with. We're having more and more churches kind of step up and say, how can we help with what Uplift's mission is? And so I think we need to kind of, like you said, capitalize on some of the momentum that we've had in the last 6 months since the hurricane, and say, let's keep that going. Let's keep that energy and keep channeling it as we move forward.
I like that you use the words like emergency and crisis. And I'm like, maybe if we saw some of these situations as an emergency and as a crisis, like, would that change our outlook on it? Because sometimes we romanticize foster care or addiction, and there's like always a hero and there's always a savior. It's just like somebody saving somebody, but like that is not, a lot of times in both areas, addiction or foster care, we are forced to address some of our own things that we've buried. And I think sometimes we're scared of that, but like there's so much healing in that. There's so much healing in being in the trenches with other people and finding out like, man, I came out better too. Like I thought I came here to help you, but like I'm actually leaving healed myself, and I didn't even realize I needed that.
Well, and I use this example all the time because, one of our areas that we're trying to get people involved in is just giving people rides. Because you can build relationships with somebody while they're in the car with you. And even some of our drivers are having their lives positively impacted just by getting to know some of the folks they're giving rides to. And it's a two-way street. And it's absolutely going to be the exact same thing as people get involved in foster care ministry or addiction and recovery ministry or whatever sort of, there's a reason that we're called to do these things. And if we're doing what we're called to do, then we're actually living the way that God created us to. So we can't help but feel closer to him as we're doing it. It's like it all works so perfectly together, but yet sometimes it's just that maybe it's the fear of starting or just the task that you're being asked to do seems bigger than what you can handle. And I think sometimes if it seems so big that you can't handle it, you're like, well, why even start? When I kind of have two thoughts on this. Like, one, yeah, it is bigger than you, and that's why we serve a really big God who's going to help us get through. But also, that's why you need that team around you so that you aren't doing it alone. It may seem big for one of you on your own, but if you have family, if you have friends, if you have a small group at church, a Sunday school class, whatever that is, that group of people really can prop you up and give you a break, give you rest when you need rest, but also, just keep cheering you on as you're doing whatever kind of ministry you're doing. And you can be doing the exact same thing for them, even if they're not serving in the exact same way as you.
Right.
And it's like, if we can all kind of get on that same page, it'd be amazing to see what God can do with all of these things. So what does Tennessee Kids Belong have? Do you have anything big coming up right now, or are there events, or is it just kind of ongoing trying to reach out and build relationships with businesses and organizations and churches and that sort of thing? Is it just kind of an ongoing thing, or do you have event kind of stuff coming up?
Well, for people that are listening, they can't see the state I'm in, but I am going to be having a baby soon. So right now, Tennessee Kids Belong in this area. We don't have any big events coming up, but
because you have a big enough event coming up.
Yes. And so right now it's just focusing on, we are building our network of businesses, and so like I just got Bays Mountain summer camp. Like they're willing to support foster families, and so just kind of connecting with some more businesses to offer support and checking in on churches that we are preparing for May. May is Foster Care Awareness Month. And so we've really been trying to reach out to churches to just give them some resources and ideas on how to celebrate during May and how to be advocates for the kids in care, but also to just celebrate the work that foster parents have done in their community. So that's kind of our biggest focus right now, is just preparing for May. So that's kind of what
awesome.
I got going on right now.
And so if anybody is a business that thinks that they could have something to offer to foster families, they can definitely we'll make sure that all of your information is linked in the description from this episode so that people can find you, that sort of thing. But also it'll be, I think, pretty easy for people to find you through the Uplift information soon, because we just asked and you just said yes to being on our board of directors, which I'm very excited about.
Too.
Yeah, so we're going to be working together even more, hopefully, going forward. Because one of the things that I said earlier is one of the things that Uplift has been really excited about is trying to include foster ministry as a part of our overall mission, because it's so closely connected to everything else that we do. I know on a previous episode that we just had come out, we were talking with another one of our board members who's been heavily involved in foster ministry. So you can kind of see the momentum is definitely there in our organization too, to really kind of get connected and get partnered. So especially as these churches are hopefully hearing your story, what you're doing, what you're seeing happening, that they're going to be like, well, we need to know how to do this well. And that's how Tennessee Kids Belong and Uplift can kind of partner together to help get churches ready to do this and ready to do ministry to the children and their families and everybody involved, ministry to even the placement organizations and all the people that are working in there. Like, everybody needs that support system backing them up, and why not us as the church to be the ones doing that?
Yep.
So I'm really excited that we're going to get to keep working together. I'm really excited to hear a little bit more about what you've been doing and kind of get to know a little bit more about what has motivated you to do this sort of thing. And I'm just really excited to see what comes up next. So thank you so much for hanging out.
Thank you for having me.
This has been a podcast powered by Uplift Appalachia. To learn more, you can find us at upliftappalachia.org.